The crystalline spires of Vaxos Prime pierced the violet sky like shards of frozen light, their surfaces dimming as emergency protocols activated across the capital. Inside the High Council chamber, Supreme Commander Nixval watched the holographic display with mounting dread as another colonial world went dark. 16 worlds in 12 cycles, she announced, her scaled fingers clenching the podium. The void swarm devours everything in its path, and our most powerful weapons barely slow its advance. The assembled council members, once proud and assured of their species' superiority, sat in stunned silence. For 10,000 years, the Vaxian Empire had dominated their arm of the galaxy. Their mastery of quantum mechanics and dark energy had allowed them to build ships that could tear holes in spacetime itself. Their weapons could reduce planets to ash. Yet against this enemy, they were helpless. The simulation project's total collapse of the Empire within 60 cycles, continued Nixval, her usually melodious voice rough with exhaustion. Our evacuation efforts can save perhaps 20% of our population, at most. Unless. Science Minister K. Rin lifted his head, bioluminescent patterns flashing across his facial ridges in a pattern of desperate hope. You cannot be suggesting what I think you are, Supreme Commander. They are barely more than primitives. The humans, Nixval confirmed, ignoring the ripple of dismay that passed through the chamber. While we focused on mastering the fundamental forces of the universe, they took a different path. Their technology is crude by our standards, but they think differently. They solve problems in ways we would never consider. They're chaos makers, spat War Minister Zextor. Their solutions are inelegant, unpredictable, dangerous. Need I remind the Council of the Durant incident, when they turned an entire star into a weapon? That very unpredictability is why we need them, Nixval countered. The void swarm adapts to every strategy we employ because we think in patterns it can predict. But humans, she activated another hologram, showing footage from various human conflicts. They combine technologies in ways that defy logic. They turn weaknesses into strengths. They achieve victory even when victory should be mathematically impossible. The council chamber erupted in arguments, but Nixval stood firm. She had spent years studying humanity, initially to better understand their greatest rival. The Vaxians had dismissed Earth as a backwater when they first discovered it 3 centuries ago. Humans had barely reached their own moon, while the Vaxians had already built an empire spanning thousands of light years. But in just 3 centuries, humanity had advanced at a pace that defied all known models of technological progression. When the Vaxians had attempted to subjugate Earth 50 years ago, expecting an easy victory, humanity had not only repelled them, but had done so using methods that still puzzled Vaxian military analysts. We have no choice, Nixval declared, silencing the chamber. Our pride has already cost us 16 worlds. I will not let it cost us everything. She straightened to her full height, her crystalline armor catching the light. I will personally travel to Earth to request their aid. And what makes you think they'll help us? Asked K. Rin softly. After everything we've done. Nixval's facial patterns shifted to show grim determination, because that is perhaps the most inexplicable thing about humans. They help even their enemies, especially in times of genuine need. They call it taking the high road, a concept our species has never fully understood. She activated a final hologram, showing the latest footage from their outer colonies. The void swarm moved like living darkness across space, breaking down matter at the quantum level and absorbing the energy. Conventional weapons passed right through it. Quantum disruption fields barely slowed it. It was as if the universe itself had developed an immune response to conscious life. We can offer them technology, resources, territory, whatever they want, she continued. But I suspect that won't be what motivates them. They will help because they can, because they believe it's right, and because they love nothing more than proving their critics wrong. The council members exchanged glances, their pride warring with their instinct for survival. Finally, First Speaker Raleth rose, his ancient frame trembling slightly. "Supreme Commander Nixval, you have command of this situation. Do what you must to save our people." Nixval bowed deeply, then turned to leave the chamber. As she walked toward her ship, she reflected on the irony of the situation. The Vaxians had spent centuries looking down on humanity as primitive, chaotic, and inferior. Now they were betting their entire civilization on the hope that humanity's chaos might be exactly what they needed to survive. Her ship, sleek and deadly despite its ceremonial function, lifted off from the capital's primary spaceport. As she ascended through the atmosphere, Nixval watched the city lights below. She wondered how many of those lights would still be shining by the time she returned, if she returned at all. The fate of an empire now rested on the response of a species they had once tried to conquer. Nixval could only hope that humanity's capacity for forgiveness matched their capacity for defying the impossible. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of Earth Defense Command headquarters, watching the sunset paint Singapore's skyline in gold. Behind her reflection, a hologram showed Supreme Commander Nixval's vessel approaching Earth's defense perimeter. "Of all the things I expected to see today," she murmured, "a Vaxian diplomatic ship wasn't one of them." "Their quantum signature matches Supreme Commander Nixval's personal vessel," reported Captain James Rodriguez, her aide. "Long-range scans confirm only minimal weaponry, ceremonial armament only. They're broadcasting surrender protocols on all frequencies." Sarah turned from the window, her expression thoughtful. At 53, she'd spent most of her career preparing to fight the Vaxians, not welcome them. The scars on her left arm were a constant reminder of their attempted invasion 5 decades ago. "Assemble the Defense Council," she ordered, "and get me a secure line to President Ochuko in Lagos." The Vaxians wouldn't send their supreme commander unless something was very, very wrong. Within an hour, the Defense Council chamber hummed with tension as representatives from Earth's major military powers gathered. Some attended in person, others as ultra-high-definition holograms, but all wore the same expression of wary curiosity. President Amara Ochuko's hologram took the central position. "Admiral Chen, your assessment." "The Vaxian vessel's power systems are running at minimal capacity," Sarah reported. "Their quantum wake suggests they came here at maximum speed, burning through resources they'd normally conserve. Whatever brought them here, they were in a hurry." "Could be a trick," General Zhang Wei commented from Beijing. "The Vaxians are masters of deception." "With respect, General," Sarah countered, "the Vaxians are also masters of pride, sending their supreme commander to us, broadcasting surrender protocols. It goes against everything we know about their psychology. This isn't deception, it's desperation." President Ochuko nodded slowly. "Admiral Chen, you've studied the Vaxians more than anyone. What do you recommend?" Sarah straightened, choosing her words carefully. "I recommend we hear them out, but not here." She activated a holographic display showing a massive starship under construction in lunar orbit. "The UES Arcturus will be ready for its shakedown cruise in 48 hours. It's the perfect neutral ground. And if things go wrong, it's also the most powerful ship humanity has ever built." The council members exchanged glances. The Arcturus was humanity's best-kept secret, a vessel that combined traditional human ingenuity with reverse-engineered Vaxian technology from the invasion. It represented everything humanity had learned about combining seemingly incompatible technologies in ways that somehow worked. "Very well," President Ochuko decided. "Admiral Chen, you'll handle the negotiations. But be careful, wounded animals are often the most dangerous." Hours later, Sarah stood in the Arcturus's observation deck, watching Nixval's ship dock. The Vaxian vessel looked like a shard of black crystal, beautiful and deadly even in its diplomatic configuration. As the airlock cycled, Sarah reflected on how far humanity had come since first contact. The Vaxians had expected Earth to be an easy conquest, assuming their superior technology would guarantee victory. Instead, they'd encountered a species that turned their own quantum weapons against them, that used civilian satellites as improvised missiles, that somehow managed to weaponize a star using nothing but mirrors and precise timing. The Durant incident, as the Vaxians called it, had become legendary, proof that humanity's primitive approach to physics could achieve results that their more advanced understanding couldn't explain. The airlock doors opened, and Supreme Commander Nixval entered. Sarah had seen Vaxians before, but never one of such high rank. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, her crystalline armor shifting colors with each movement, facial ridges glowing with bioluminescent patterns that expressed emotions Sarah could only guess at. "Admiral Chen," Nixval said, her translator rendering her words into perfect English. "Thank you for receiving me." "Supreme Commander," Sarah replied with a formal bow. "Welcome aboard the Arcturus." Nixval's facial patterns shifted to what Sarah recognized as surprise. "Arcturus, your ship shares its name with a star. We name our most important vessels after stars," Sarah explained. "It reminds us that no matter how far we advance, there's always something bigger than us out there." The Vaxian commander's patterns shifted again. Respect, perhaps. That is a very human perspective, and it is precisely why we have come. She paused, and Sarah saw something she'd never expected to see in a Vaxian. Fear. "We need your help, Admiral Chen. My empire is facing extinction, and all our advanced technology, all our mastery of quantum mechanics and dark energy, has failed us. We need human innovation. We need human unpredictability. We need chaos," Sarah finished, understanding dawning. "You need the very thing about us that you've always despised." Nixval's patterns flashed acknowledgement. "Yes, and we are prepared to offer anything, technology, resources, territory, in exchange for your aid." Sarah turned to look out at Earth, gleaming blue and white below them. "Tell me everything, Supreme Commander, and then we'll decide if your offer is one humanity can accept." As Nixval began her explanation, Sarah listened with growing concern. The void swarm sounded unlike anything humanity had ever faced. But then again, humanity had a habit of surviving things that should have been impossible to survive. Perhaps it was time to show the galaxy why. The UES Arcturus hung in high Earth orbit, its quantum-enhanced hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Inside the ship's main briefing room, Admiral Chen faced the assembled crew, a hand-picked team representing the best of humanity's military and scientific minds. "The situation is this," she began, activating a holographic display of Vaxian space. "An entity the Vaxians call the Void Swarm is consuming their empire world by world. Conventional weapons pass through it. Quantum disruption fields barely slow it. It breaks down matter at the subatomic level and absorbs the energy." Dr. Maya Patel, the ship's chief scientist, raised her hand. "Admiral, I've reviewed the Vaxian data. This swarm, it's like nothing we've ever encountered. It doesn't just consume matter. It seems to rewrite the laws of physics in its vicinity." "Which is exactly why the Vaxians came to us," Sarah replied. "Their understanding of quantum mechanics is superior to ours, but they're too locked into their way of thinking. They need our chaos." Lieutenant Commander David O'Neill, weapons specialist, leaned forward. "What exactly are we bringing to this fight, Admiral? The Arcturus is impressive, but if the Vaxians' advanced tech couldn't stop this thing." Sarah smiled, activating another hologram showing the Arcturus's unique weapon systems. "We're bringing humanity's greatest strength, Commander, our ability to combine things that shouldn't work together and somehow make them work." The display highlighted various sections of the ship. The Arcturus represented a radical departure from both human and Vaxian ship design. Its quantum-enhanced hull incorporated materials that should have been incompatible. Its weapon systems combined principles from a dozen different scientific disciplines. Most importantly, it carried something no Vaxian would have ever thought to create. "The Infinity Engine," Dr. Patil announced, her dark eyes gleaming with pride. "A power core that deliberately creates and harnesses quantum paradoxes, The Vaxians would consider it an abomination. It breaks half their laws of physics, and that's exactly why it might work against the Void Swarm. Sarah continued, if this entity adapts to predictable patterns, we'll give it something it can't predict, something that shouldn't exist according to any rational understanding of physics. The crew exchanged glances, excited, nervous, determined. They had all volunteered for this mission despite knowing the risks. Humanity's first major joint operation with their former enemies, venturing into unknown space to face an impossible threat. We launch in 6 hours, Sarah announced. Supreme Commander Nixval's ship will guide us through Vaxian space. Remember, we're not just fighting to save their empire. We're showing the galaxy what humanity can do. As the crew dispersed to their stations, Sarah remained in the briefing room with Dr. Patel and Commander O'Neill. They were her most experienced officers, and she needed their insight. Maya, how stable is the Infinity engine really? She asked once they were alone. The scientist's expression turned serious. Stable isn't the right word, Admiral. It's consistently unstable. We're essentially maintaining a controlled quantum impossibility. The Vaxian sensors won't even be able to look at it directly. It'll offend their understanding of physics too much. Good, Sarah nodded. That's exactly what we need. David, how are the weapon modifications coming along? O'Neill pulled up a detailed schematic. We've integrated the Vaxian quantum disruptors with our more conventional weapons. The combinations are unpredictable, but that's the point, isn't it? We're fighting chaos with chaos. Sarah studied the schematics, remembering the Durant incident that had ended the Vaxian invasion 50 years ago. Humanity had used a complex array of orbital mirrors to focus and redirect a star's energy, creating a weapon that defied Vaxian understanding of stellar physics. It hadn't been elegant or predictable, but it had worked. The Vaxians think in elegant solutions, she mused. Perfect equations, perfect execution. But sometimes the universe doesn't want elegant solutions. Sometimes it needs a sledgehammer. 6 hours later, the Arcturus's engines hummed to life. The massive ship moved with surprising grace for its size, falling into formation alongside Nixval's vessel. As they prepared to enter quantum space, Sarah stood on the bridge, watching her crew work with practiced efficiency. Infinity engine stable. Well, stable for it, Dr. Paddle reported from her station. Ready for quantum jump. Weapons systems online, O'Neill added. All experimental combinations reading as functional as they're going to get. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Send word to Supreme Commander Nixval. We're ready. Let's show the galaxy what happens when humanity decides to solve an impossible problem. The stars blurred around them as both ships entered quantum space, beginning their journey toward Vaxian territory. Toward a threat that consumed worlds and defied the laws of physics. Toward humanity's chance to prove that sometimes the most elegant solution is no solution at all. Sometimes you just need to rewrite the rules of the game entirely. The quantum space corridor shimmered around the UES Arcturus as it emerged into the Vaxian frontier. The scene that greeted them made even the hardened bridge crew fall silent. Where there should have been stars, there was only void, absolute darkness that seemed to consume light itself. My God, whispered Dr. Patel, her instruments going haywire. It's not just consuming matter. It's consuming space-time itself. The void swarm stretched across the viewport like a living shadow, tendrils of pure nothingness reaching out toward distant stars. Behind it lay the graveyard of Vaxian worlds, 16 planets reduced to hollow shells, their very atomic structure broken down and absorbed. Supreme Commander Nixval's voice crackled over the comm. This is the front line, Admiral Chen. The swarm's advance has accelerated. We have perhaps 48 hours before it reaches the next populated system. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing. The void swarm defied conventional physics, making standard combat tactics useless. But perhaps that was exactly what they needed, something unconventional, something that defied physics itself. Maya, "What's the infinity engine showing?" she asked. Dr. Patel's fingers flew across her console. "It's reacting to the swarm's presence. The quantum paradoxes are becoming more pronounced. Admiral, I think the engine recognizes something about the swarm's nature." Like, Sarah mused. "The swarm breaks physics, and we built an engine that does the same thing." "David, prepare the experimental weapon combinations. All of them." Commander O'Neill nodded grimly, ready to break some laws of physics. "Admiral." The Arcturus moved closer to the edge of the void, its sensors gathering data that made less sense with each passing moment. The Vaxian ships in formation around them kept their distance from the human vessel, their own sensors unable to properly process the infinity engine's existence. "Supreme Commander," Sarah called over the comm, "I need your ships to fall back to a safe distance. What we're about to try might have some unpredictable effects." "Admiral Chen." Nick's Val's voice held a note of concern. "What exactly are you planning?" Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Something completely irrational, Supreme Commander. Something only humans would be crazy enough to attempt." She turned to Dr. Patel. "Maya, remember that theory you had about using the infinity engine to create a cascading series of quantum paradoxes?" The scientist's eyes widened. "Admiral, that was purely theoretical. The mathematical models suggest it could tear a hole in reality itself." "Perfect." Sarah nodded. "That's exactly what we need. David, prepare to fire everything we got directly into whatever hole Maya creates. We're going to fight this void with our own void." As the Vaxian ships retreated to a safe distance, the Arcturus's crew worked with practiced precision, preparing for what could either be their greatest achievement or their last moment. The infinity engine's hum grew louder, its impossible existence becoming even more impossible as Dr. Patel pushed it beyond its designed limits. "Engine at 200% of recommended capacity," she reported, sweat beading on her forehead. "The quantum paradoxes are beginning to cascade. Reality is becoming unstable." Sarah watched as space itself began to ripple around them, the laws of physics buckling under the strain of what they were attempting. The void swarm seemed to notice them finally, tendrils of darkness reaching toward the ship. "Now, Maya," Sarah ordered, "create your hole in reality." Dr. Patil activated the final sequence. The infinity engine screamed in protest as it generated a paradox so fundamental that space itself couldn't ignore it. Before them, reality tore open, not the clean quantum tunnels the Vaxians used for travel, but a jagged wound in the universe itself. "All weapons, fire," Sarah commanded. Commander O'Neill unleashed everything. Quantum disruptors combined with conventional warheads, tachyon beams merged with plasma torpedoes, weapons that shouldn't work together somehow working in perfect chaotic harmony. The combined force struck the tear in reality, and for a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then the impossible happened. The tear began to grow, spreading like cracks in glass, but instead of destroying everything, it began to pull. The void swarm, drawn to this new impossibility that rivaled its own nature, found itself being dragged toward the rupture. "It's working," Dr. Patil exclaimed. "The swarm, it's being pulled into the tear." "But Admiral, we can't control this much longer. The engine is reaching critical levels." Sarah watched as the living darkness that had consumed 16 worlds was slowly but surely drawn into the wound they'd created in reality. "Supreme Commander," she called to Nick's Val, "are your sensors confirming this? Is the swarm being destroyed?" "Not destroyed," came the reply, filled with awe. "Redirected. You've torn a hole between realities, Admiral Chen. You're sending it somewhere else. Let's hope it's somewhere it can't come back from," Sarah muttered. "Maya, how much longer can we maintain this?" 30 seconds, maximum," Dr. Patil replied through gritted teeth. "After that, either the engine dies, or we do." Those 30 seconds felt like an eternity as they watched the void swarm being pulled inexorably into the tear. When the last tendril of darkness disappeared, Sarah gave the order. Shut it down. All power to shields. The Infinity engine powered down. The tear in reality snapped closed, and the universe rushed to heal itself. The Arcturus rocked violently as reality reasserted itself, but when the dust settled, they were still there, and the void swarm was gone. In the stunned silence that followed, Supreme Commander Nix Val's voice came over the comm once more. Admiral Chen, what you just did, it should have been impossible. Sarah looked at her crew, exhausted, relieved, proud. That's humanity's specialty. Supreme Commander, we specialize in the impossible. In the Great Hall of the Vaxian High Council, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before an assembly of the most powerful beings in the Empire. The crystalline chamber, once dimmed by fear and desperation, now sparkled with renewed hope. 3 months had passed since the Arcturus's impossible victory over the Void Swarm. The records will show, Supreme Commander Nix Val announced, her voice carrying through the chamber, that humanity did what we could not. They faced an enemy that defied the laws of physics, and they responded by defying those laws even further. Sarah watched as the council members' bioluminescent patterns shifted in what she now recognized as expressions of respect, a far cry from their historical disdain for humanity's primitive methods. The Infinity engine has been decommissioned, Sarah reported. Some technologies are too dangerous to maintain, even in peacetime. But the principles we discovered, the idea that sometimes you have to break the rules to save the game, those will live on. Science Minister K. Rin stepped forward, his patterns showing intense curiosity. We have analyzed your methods extensively, Admiral Chen. We still cannot explain how you survived creating a tear in reality itself. By all known laws of physics. That's exactly the point, Sarah interrupted gently. Sometimes the known laws aren't enough. Sometimes you need to write new ones. The Arcturus's victory had done more than save the Vaxian Empire. It had fundamentally changed how they viewed the universe. Their rigid adherence to elegant solutions had been shaken by humanity's willingness to embrace chaos, to try the impossible simply because it hadn't been tried before. We propose an alliance, First Speaker Ralith announced, rising from his ancient throne. Not one of necessity, as before, but one of choice. Our knowledge of quantum mechanics combined with your unique approach to problem solving could revolutionize our understanding of the universe. Sarah smiled, thinking of Dr. Patel's excited plans for joint research projects, of Commander O'Neill's animated discussions with Vaxian weapons specialists about combining their technologies in new ways. We would be honored, she replied. But there was one more thing that needed to be said. However, she continued, this alliance must be one of equals. No more talk of primitive species or superior civilizations. The universe has shown us that every approach has its place, every perspective its value. The council members exchanged glances, their patterns shifting in complex ways. Finally, Nix Val spoke. We agree. Our pride nearly cost us everything. It is time for the Vaxian Empire to embrace a new way of thinking. As the formal alliance treaties were drawn up, Sarah stood at a window overlooking the capital city. The Vaxian spires still reached toward the violet sky, but they seemed different now, less imposing, more inviting. Ships of both species moved through the airways, their designs already beginning to show signs of cross-cultural influence. They're calling it the Chen Principle, Dr. Patel said, joining her at the window. The idea that sometimes the most elegant solution is no solution at all. Sarah laughed softly. I'm not sure how I feel about having a principle named after me, especially one that basically says break everything and see what happens. That's not what it means, Maya corrected. It means that true understanding comes from being willing to question everything we think we know. The Vaxians had to learn that lesson the hard way. Looking out at the city, Sarah could see the future taking shape. Human ingenuity and Vaxian precision, chaos and order, impossibility and elegance, all working together to create something new. Something neither species could have achieved alone. You know, she mused, 50 years ago, we were fighting each other. Now we're rewriting the laws of physics together. I'd call that progress. As if to emphasize her point, a new ship rose from the spaceport, one of the first joint human-Vaxian designs. It combined the crystalline beauty of Vaxian architecture with the robust practicality of human engineering. Not elegant, not chaotic, but something in between. Something new. The void swarm had threatened to consume everything, but instead, it had forced two vastly different species to look past their differences and recognize the strength in their diversity. In facing an impossible enemy, they had created an impossible alliance. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of space, the UES Arcturus's infinity engine lay dormant, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't the ability to follow the rules. It's the courage to break them when they need to be broken. The age of isolation was over. The age of collaboration had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.